Hello! Another salute. Hello again. Double salute. Hello. Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I'm your host, Chris. This is a show where we are going to talk about the comic book news of the week, as well as the fun comics that I picked up this week. We've got a live chat. I'm slightly out of breath because at the last minute, I realized I wasn't seeing the screen too clearly, realized I'd left my glasses upstairs. So you caught me like running up to get them and then running back down to get the show started on time. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I decided to wear some green, some Godzilla green. I hope you are all having a good day, good weekend, good week. Let me give some shout outs to folks and then we'll get started on the show. Wow, hold on. I got to scroll way back. Ooh. Hello. Look at this. All sorts of cool names here. Familiar and new. Hey, Todd Klein, the letterer? Wow. Big fan. I am a nerd for lettering. West Coast Dave Engers, my local fellow comic tuber pal. There's a lot of comic book YouTubers in the Pacific Northwest. Andy, yes, you made it to the start. Circuitron, nice to see you again. Happy Drinking Excuse Day. That's good. Well, thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Hello. If I missed any of you, I apologize. It is not at all intentional. Just running through the list a little bit. We'll get started at a leisurely pace because it takes usually a little while for the first few people to notice that it's gone up. And I think a lot of people will want to know the main topic. Let me just get a sip of my green beverage for St. Patrick's Day. Tastes green. Hope you're all doing well. Maybe you saw, but on this channel yesterday, uploaded a new trash movie bonanza. Jim Mafood and I took a look at Spawn. I think our editor, Jamie, made us look really good. He did some funny stuff with the edits. And over on Comic Tropes, my other channel, I uploaded a video analyzing the artwork of Stuart Immonen, just an artist that I really admire. So a couple of plugs for myself. With that out of the way, I'll bring up my little document. Hey, EJ, didn't even realize it's St. Paddy's Day. What kind of an Irishman are you, EJ? What kind of an Irishman are you? Serge probably was greener. Hello. Sorry if I've missed anyone. This is going to be a fun one. I hope I'm starting at a good vibe here, and then I can like bring the energy up instead of starting at 10 and then slowly trickling down. Oh. Spawn did have a good soundtrack. Maybe one of the best parts of the movie. All right, let's see here. What do I need? There we go. See, I'm pointing. This is an important topic. You can tell because I'm pointing at it and thinking, we got to talk about this. But we're not going to talk about it right away. Let's see. We have Invincible. He can go to hell. What am I talking about there? So, Invincible just wrapped its third season. Not going to talk about spoilers. Don't worry. That's really not what I do here. But I think it got a really good reaction in general. Let's see. So, it included a post-credit scene, but it's not really a spoiler. It's just because this is something just sort of fun. It's just sort of its own thing. It showed us Damien Darkblood, who we had not seen on the show in quite a while. And there's a reason for that. This is a scene that was not adapted from the original comic books. So, in an interview this week with Variety, Robert Kirkman said that this could lead into an original story for the show. So far, they've just been doing as straight an adaptation as possible, minus one or two sort of like crossover type characters that they're not going to, surprise, he didn't get the rights to include Spider-Man in the Spider-Man crossover. But what are we talking about? Here's a quote from Robert. There's a storyline from the comic that I never got around to doing. I'll stop my impression. Every superhero story has some chapter where they go to hell and they fight the devil. It happens in DC and Marvel comics. It's a big deal. I never got around to doing anything like that in Invincible. I kept getting sidetracked and there was never a good time. So it's entirely possible that we may be doing something like that in the show. In other words, a story that he wanted to do in the comics, just never found the space for it. We might get something new. I think that that's really, really cool. Yeah, it was supposed to be in the comic, but I think that that's a great idea. I think it is. I think every once in a while you need to surprise somebody by making a little bit of a change. The idea that, like, hey, there were these subplots or elements that never quite got to, like, fitting in for some reason, but maybe now we can. I like that. I like that a lot. Well, thanks for dropping in. Oh, Jimmy Jams is here. A very important update. I started watching Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and it's genius. Everyone can relax now. Chill, babies. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so glad you checked it out because it is a favorite of mine. It's only like 6 episodes, so it's pretty quick to get through, but really, really funny on multiple levels. I'm really glad that you checked it out. And then if you guys, for any reason, aren't following Jim on, say, like Instagram and other socials, he's got 2 things. He's got 2 big updates. One is he's about to do fulfillment on Defective Comics Presents, the first volume. He's got that one printed and everything in hand. And then he's got a new art book up for sale. So check out his website for that. Happy to give a friend a plug. Hey, speaking of plug, I can plug in a new sugar-free Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Yum. It's green. But yeah, it looks like people are enjoying watching our take on Spawn and going back to the 90s. What else have we got for some news? Let's get into, we'll get into the big topic. There is a Stan Lee elder abuse documentary. Technically, it's a crowd-funded project, and there was a trailer this week. But I felt really weird about the whole thing, and maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so I'm going to basically give you my take on this bit of news, and you all can sort of like go, Chris, I think you're wrong here, or I agree with you there. There's some nebulous stuff about it that just like gave me the ick, but we'll see. So first of all, this week, to level set, maybe you don't know anything about it, there was a trailer for a Kickstarter campaign by a guy named John Bolerjack. He was a former assistant for Stan Lee. He also makes indie comics. He worked at a comic book shop, went to college to learn film editing. But anyway, he was an assistant for Stan Lee in his last maybe 4 years. And now he wants to fund a documentary about the elder abuse that Stan Lee suffered in his last few years, which, first of all, I just got to say, sounds very depressing. Like, that's just, I read the news and kept up with it. I think we talked about it on this show. It's hard to remember how long I've been doing this. Maybe I just talked about it more on socials now that I think of it, because I guess it was back in 2017 or 18 that Stan passed? Something like that. It's hard to remember off the top of my head. And anyway, so they're making a documentary about this. First of all, I got to say, just a depressing topic. It's a worthy topic to talk about elder abuse. That probably doesn't get discussed enough. But as far as a look back at somebody that tried to be everybody's favorite uncle, like a spokesman for comics, I don't really want to see this dark stuff where Stan isn't getting treated well. I watched that trailer and I felt kind of sick and gross. Thank you for the super chat, Steve. I got a lot to say on this. So in the trailer, a few people said it's all done. I'm going to talk about this actually. Yeah, I've got a lot to say. So we're getting there. We'll be patient. But thank you for the super chat, Steve. And it sounds like we're mostly on the same page. So second, I got to say, Bowler Jack in this trailer says he was powerless to defend Lee at the time that he was filming this, but that he accumulated hundreds of hours of footage documenting the abuse. And this is like not what he doesn't name the names in here, but we know now with the retrospect, it was some of Stan Lee's managers like Kea Morgan, Max Anderson. Not great people, it seemed like. I gotta say, first of all, if you cared, first, you didn't mention anything while it was going on. Second, even after Stan passed, you still could have spoken up and these guys could have been prosecuted. And guess what? You conveniently waited until the statute of limitations on these crimes has expired. It's something like 2 to 4 years. Just feels weird already. Just little things, not a reason not to do this project. Just feels, what are we doing here? Like, is this helping Stan or his family in any way? No. Elder abuse should be talked about, I'll admit, but kind of weird. This is my take. I want to add this. Back in July of 2022, Bowler Jack, down here, I'm going to play a little video. He was on a YouTube show, the Pop XP Network, and he said that he was recording it to pitch it as a reality TV series about Stan's travel. I'm going to play a little clip, but you guys tell me if the audio is playing. It's only about 30 seconds. Wait. And then I've got another thing, but where I lost my mouse. There we go. Okay. No sound. Sorry, guys. I'll stop. Okay. I don't know what I did wrong there. I used to be able to play sound through these clips. Sorry about the confusion there. Well, anyway, it's still like what I said. It's about 30 seconds of him saying, he was in school studying like documentary, like film editing. He had a friend that like somehow was connected to Stan. And he was like, hey, he says in this clip, maybe I can Trojan horse my way into getting to know Stan and I can like film what goes on behind the scenes. In other words, he was never trying to film this as like, the original goal was not to expose people for abusing Stan. The goal was to profit off of it by pitching a reality show and getting a gig. Okay. So let's move on to something else. A quote. Here's something else that I saw. Years ago, Bowler Jack talked about this in the book True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee. So I've got like a little clip here. And he says, we were the mercenaries. And if anyone wants to deny that or wants to act like they were doing it for an altruistic reason, they're liars. Talks a little bit about who John is and that they filmed this or got this quote at the Jacob Javits Center during NYCC. He's talking about Stan's inner circle in its final days, a period in which Stan was beset by characters of questionable moral fiber, including, by his own admission, Bowler Jack himself. He worked for Max Anderson, that was Stan Lee's travel manager, and was thus regularly around Stan in the latter's waning years. Quote, when I first started, I was a fanboy, and when you ask a fanboy, hey, would you like to hang out with Stan? Anyone is going to take that opportunity, Bowler Jack says. And then, over time, you start to become part of the entourage. Just like the violence, you get used to it, and it desensitizes you. It becomes normalized. And then he talks about how they were just sort of average people and let this go on. Yuck. So, like in the trailer for this crowdfunder, Bowler Jack says, like, now I'm speaking up to, get Stan justice that he deserves and stuff. But, if we watch his YouTube appearances and his quotes in books from a few years ago, he was pretty upfront that, like, yeah, I was part of, like, this group that was exploiting Stan. You know what I mean? Let me acknowledge Steve's kind super chats. I really can't ignore that. Not to jump on what you're probably about to say, but I feel we're on the same page. Feels like someone is taking advantage of the situation to profit. I think that would be hard to argue against, even if you think it's like a worthy project. I mean, somebody is definitely profiting off of Stan. What else? Long story short, I am tired of the fact that grifting culture or taking advantage of people or situations is normalized and not morally bankrupt. That's the feeling I'm getting. And I see your comment too, Dave. I've got more to say. That's why I needed 2 whole slides. Very professional, I know. So the Kickstarter documentary is asking for $300,000 to complete this. That just seems a little odd too, because clearly the footage has already been shot. There's no way to get more footage, right? And the footage is the main thing. So, all this sort of like, why would you need $300,000 to do, much else? Like, you don't need to do big special effects or anything. You've got title, you've got interviews and stuff, but it seems like they've already got the interviews if you look at the trailer. So I'm really, really confused as to like what that $300,000 could truly go to. This is going to get a little weird, okay? This is going to get sus. There are over 60 reward tiers. None of them give you a copy of the movie, digital or physical. The closest that it comes to giving you access to the movie itself, there are screenings in different cities. It's $150 to attend a screening. I can't think of my favorite movie in the world if it had like, the main actor, the main writer or director or something there. $150 sounds like a lot to me to see a film once. $150 to see this thing once and not own a copy? I'm going to keep going. Last thing I think I have here, there's a tier, a reward tier. $500. If you go to LA, John will take you on a tour of all the places where all these bad things happen to Stan. That just sounds so depressing to me. Maybe somebody out there that speaks to them, and if so, go with God, I guess. But $500 to be sort of told like, oh yeah, like that's where Stan was like, knocked down. I don't know if he was knocked down. That's where, we told Stan to sign 500 Captain America shields. This is where we told him to sign 200 copies of Amazing Spider-Man. I don't want anything to do with it. They've got some people in it, some pros, whose take I would value. I do respect Mark Waid. On a certain level, not as a person, but as like somebody that's created some stuff. Roy Thomas has a lot of history, and I'm curious what kind of things he has to say historically. He was around Stan a lot. They've got Rob Liefeld. I'm curious what Rob has to say about. I'm curious what Dustin Nguyen has to say. I'm curious, but they're all sort of like, when they're talking to them, they're reacting as though they've already seen this documentary. They're like, this documentary, blah, 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 showed this. So anyway, I guess that's basically everything I have to say. I'm not going to support this Kickstarter. If you do, I'm not really judging you, but it raises the hairs on the back of my neck. I don't understand the purpose truly. Well, I feel like I do. I feel like the purpose is to make money off of Stan's name, as compared to being completely altruistic and being like, look, elder abuse is... Because here's the thing. If it was about elder abuse, yeah, talking to a couple comic book pros is valid. But you know what would be really valid? Talking to home healthcare and hospice workers to get their take on things. Talking to people that work in, community healthcare and other people that have dealt with, families and the impact that elder abuse has. And then Stan is maybe just the primary example that they're showing us. But it's about Stan Lee. It's just about Stan Lee. I guess that's all I've got to say. Yeah. Kevin Smith should give this guy $200,000 for the footage, and Kevin can cut the documentary instead. I just don't want to see it. It sounds depressing. This guy knows his footage is the only thing he has of value, so he's going to wring every red cent of it. Maybe. There are many specialists in rooting out and prosecuting elder abuse. Curiously, none of them were interviewed. Or if they were, it certainly isn't the selling point. They're not featured in the documentary or mentioned in the Kickstarter. You know? So, yeah. All the money should go to helping elder abuse. Yeah, what if even a portion of it was announced as like, hey, out of this 300,000, 100,000 is going to victims of elder abuse. I don't know. The documentary does not need to exist. It's absolutely exploitation. I think we've got a lot of documentaries out there on Stan Lee and what he did in comics and basically his life. The last few years are very depressing. There are photos out there of people getting their photo taken with Stan at a convention, and Stan is like asleep. He's just an exhausted man. I don't like it. Thank you, Rebellious Monkey. Seriously, this guy had the power to take this footage to the authorities, but realizing that he was part of that group and making a documentary about this, not supporting it 100%. You can hear certain things from the director, editor, John Bolerjack, off camera telling him, like, Stan's like really sad at one point, going like, I thought we were done. And he's going like, you're never done, Stan. You're never done. It never ends. And then Stan going like, boy, you sure get your money's worth out of me. And John's joking like, yeah, you're worth 5 pennies. And I'm like, that just seems mean. I get that, like, you're joking around with a friend in a way because he must have known him, but it doesn't come across as a good look. It just doesn't. Picked up the Feuding the Marvel Way Stan Lee versus Jack Kirby at IC3 this weekend. Oh man, IC3 sounded fantastic. What a cool convention. Everybody that was posting about it on social, it looked really, really cool. I'm going to move on to something else. It's related to Stan Lee, but not at all related to the documentary, okay? So what is Smudgegate? I'll get into it. So this week, the Instagram account, the 9.9 Newsstand, posted something. And that Instagram account is great if you're into the collecting aspect. They just keep up to date with the news on like graded comics, what's selling, what's going down in value, as well as if there's ever any problems with grading agencies, they talk about that as news. But this was interesting to me. So they found something suspicious regarding Stan Lee signed and graded comics. I'll show you some images too. So the 9.9 Newsstand found 10 copies of Amazing Spider-Man 252 that were all submitted at once. They all allegedly have Stan's signature. They're all graded and certified as signed editions. But all 10 had severe smudging. All 10. So let me look at this. These are all close-ups. 10 in a row. Certificates go in sequential order when they're submitted by like one person as a group. And so like these are, you can look up the certification number if you're curious to see the whole, you can look CGC certified books up, see the images and stuff. I know. This is just a weird one, though. This is a weird scandal. I don't know what to make of it. At all. Plus, I was never going to support the documentary anyways, because the video's trailer is nothing but major red flags. I agree with you. Thanks for the super chat. That means a lot to me. I really do appreciate the support. So, why are they all smudged like this? I mean, first of all, there's no clear answer. This is just something that has been noted this week by this Instagram account. Theoretically, it brings up questions. Was this a case of Stan in his later years not having the dexterity and accidentally, maybe he was doing it himself? I don't know. Or is it something more scammy, like these are not authentic signatures, and so somebody smudged them to fudge that? I don't know, but CGC still certified them as signed, and I'll just say that I don't collect graded comics. I don't have anything against them. It's just not my area of interest. But it does shake my confidence in CGC if they can look at that and go like, oh, yep, that's definitely for real, certified. What? I just, it probably is, okay? It probably is if we're being realistic. But no notes, no investigation or anything. Just like, yep, those are Stanley's signatures. Exactly. All of these things are certified at like 9.6 to 9.8. Wow. Just a weird thing I wanted to share. Moving on. If you have been on social media this week, you would have seen this too. A lot of people spoke out against Marvel. Just to be clear, I do have some fun, happy news in here. These are just the things that were biggest this week in comics. They just were. A bunch of artists had some really harsh things to say about working at Marvel. This is the product of doing a private signing with somebody. A private signing? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if they require a witness. I sounded like a shy guy? I don't remember what a shy guy sounds like. Otherwise, I'd repeat it. I don't know. A lot of people telling me Conquest was awesome. And I love who they got as the voice actor. I won't say it in case that counts as a spoiler. So let's talk about this, why they're talking up against Marvel. So Dustin Nguyen started this conversation. He posted this on his Instagram, and I'll just boil it down. He said he's tired of Marvel's page rates. He explained that he asked them for just a $75 page rate increase after working with them for about 15 years, just to see if they'd do it. No answer, no response at all. So he just let him have it. And he was just like, nope, I'm done. You know, like this is like minimum wage and it's just not worth it to me. Your mileage may vary. You know, it probably depends where you live, what your expenses are, whether you're trying to break in or not. But it doesn't sound like Marvel's in a great place for how they reward their creators right now. Pretty rough. Yeah, huge blow up. The responses, let me just digest them for you. But I definitely recommend checking out Dustin Nguyen's page on Insta if you want to really see the back and forth with the artistic community in comics. Led to similar responses from pros like Sean Gordon Murphy saying that he's been blacklisted at Marvel for 10 years. He said, you know, I don't think Marvel would take me unless I cut my page rate by a third and agreed to work on, like, you know, their lowest selling book. I don't know. That's what he said. Zoe Thorogood had something pretty damning. She said she did a design sketch for Marvel. It only paid $100, and she's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. But I just kind of like, I was amused at the idea of doing a design for Marvel. You know, they let me go nuts. Fine, $100. But then they used it as the cover on a Spider-Verse book. No additional compensation. $100. $100. Editor Heather Antos added that when the government last raised the minimum wage, Marvel's assistant editors were so low paid, Marvel had no choice but to raise their salary and then also give them bonuses, or, well, like overtime pay, basically, just to meet that new minimum. That's it. Like, they were at the bottom. An assistant editor at like a gigantic company. What? Oh, here's somebody. Stepan Sejic, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. I'm doing my best. My experiences were only ever with DC, and they were very fair and punctual with residuals. That mirrors a lot of what I was reading. People said that like DC is just paying a little better, and this is no shade at all to what Marvel is putting out, because they do have several books that I currently really enjoy. But I think that some of the best artists that are working in mainstream comics are at DC right now. You know, DC has some really great people, some really big hitters. Buongiorno. Thank you. And I also just included this Instagram post from my pal Rick Remender. You know, he's posting the third wave of books from his imprint Giant Generator and like listing some of these awesome creators that are working on them. And he says, creator owned or die. Comics are better when they are owned by the people who make them. Heartless, profit-driven corporations do not love you. Blood of your labor is a short-term game that leaves you with nothing in the end. It is better to play great music to an intimate audience than to feed bullshit to an auditorium. I am dedicated to making great comics owned by the people who create them. I will die on this hill. And that's from a guy who, for a while was one of the biggest writers at Marvel. I mean, they started by giving him all the 90s stuff that at the time wasn't selling, like Punisher and Venom and, Uncanny X-Force. And he made all of it like a big hit. And they were like, okay, here's an Avengers book. He's like, okay, well, thanks. Time to go back to doing creator-owned. Thank you. I'm so sorry. I just haven't heard it. You have to hear it instead of guessing. And I need to hear it. But thank you so much for your 2 cents. And yeah, big fan. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot. Let's see. The Zoe Thorogood story really pissed me off. I was taking a break from Marvel, but that just turned into a full-on boycott. Wow. They do have some good people that must be being treated okay. Hold on. Let me be clear. Rick was not saying this in reply to Dustin. He posted it himself about his books. And Rick has been very firm on his stance for quite a long time now. He started with self-publishing, did a bunch of books at places like Slave Labor Graphics and Image, did do some work for a while at Marvel, and hey, why not? Sometimes it's fun, sometimes the pay can be good on royalties, and it can get your name out to new people. But he's been doing his own creator-owned stuff at Image for quite a while now, and he's been pretty vocal about it. If you have a hit creator-owned book, no joke, no big 2 payment comes close. It truly is the end game. Robert Kirkman said that years ago when I had him on Comic Tropes and we were just talking about some of his time at Marvel. And he was like, it wasn't worth the hassle to deal with like editors there when he was making what he was making with like Invincible and Walking Dead. He's like, it just wasn't worth the hassle. So I can understand, I have a lot of affection for some of these mainstream characters. If I was offered the opportunity to write a Spider-Man or a Batman story or a, Dr. Fate or, a Space Cabbie, a Speedball, I would be very tempted to take it. But you'd have to really look hard at the contract and what you're getting for it. But I would be very tempted. I'd be very tempted. Very nice, very nice. Look, I love comics as a medium. I love the stuff that's created. I think it's got some of the most creative writers and artists of all time. And I think that some of the stories are just indelible. And they're almost always just fun. They can make me feel emotions. I love comics. Do I love the industry aspect of it? No. I mean, you go back to the golden age and like what happened with Siegel and Schuster? They got next to nothing for Superman. And there'd be nothing without Superman. IC3 was awesome. Support indie. Very nice. Thank you for the support too. That's awesome. Moving on. Peter David needs some help. I really don't love the weeks where I just have like sort of sad news to share. It's interesting to discuss, but it definitely like brings me down a little. Fair question, but no, I haven't seen any updates. So Peter David, let's talk about him real quick. Writer Peter David, he's had health issues in the past. And now he's been denied Medicaid. So a friend has launched a GoFundMe to help the David family. Peter is recovering from issues like kidney disease, several small strokes. And from all accounts, he's slowly doing better, but it requires a lot of health care. At a certain point, private insurance, as well as our public assistance programs, they can terminate your coverage. If they feel that, like, no, we're not going to like support this anymore, guess what? Sometimes you are just out of luck in this country. It's crazy to me. It does not make sense. It's a broken system, but it's a fact, okay? So, until recently, he had coverage, long-term care, through Medicaid. That's our government program for seniors and certain people with disabilities. But they've cut him off. It means he does not have any help to pay his medical bills right now. So, just want to mention, some of his most memorable projects have definitely made millions for the people he's worked for. He had a 12-year run on Hulk. Among many other things, he introduced the Professor Hulk personality, which has been used very prominently in the last 2 Avengers movies, as well as She-Hulk, now that I think of it. He worked on Aquaman, sort of a fresh reboot type of run. Ton of the concepts and stuff in there were used in the last 2 movies. The character Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, one of the main important characters in the last Spider-Verse movie, and the guy doesn't have enough money to pay for all of his own health care. Yikes. It's not right. He's great. Oh, that's so cool. I also grew up on his Hulk run, and I love his Hulk run. I really do. Yes, totally agree. Professor Hulk was a huge era of that character. He's had a lot, and yeah. Oh, the healthcare system here is so broken. I don't know. Yeah. I hope that by mentioning this, and I'll just include that link there, it's too bad that we have to be in this position to try to help some of the creators that we adore. But maybe we can, if you can do $5, maybe a bunch of us, that adds up. And also, maybe by talking about it, and I know my show is pretty small in the scheme of things, but at least it's very focused on comics and people in the comics world come across it. Maybe we can potentially guilt Marvel or DC into giving him some payments, going like, hey, you know what? Here's some royalties for all the stuff you've done for us. See that you could, every once in a while, Marvel or DC can surprise you because, yes, it's a corporation, but some of the people working there are still human beings. And sometimes you can make them go, oh, you know what? We can do something. So who knows? Maybe, talking about this gets it in front of the right person. Somebody whispers in Kevin Feige's ear, like, hey, it's not a good look to use Professor Hulk again. Let's give Peter David something to stay alive and comfortable, take care of his family. I also liked his Dark Tower run, Larry. I'm a big fan of Stephen King, and the Dark Tower series I like it. I like it a lot. And the comics that King sort of oversaw a little bit, but Peter David wrote, I thought Jay Lee on art, they were awesome. They were really, really cool. Oh, yeah. No, the Maestro, Mr. Fix-It, so many important concepts regarding the Hulk. Great point. I think Heroes Initiative has done something. They can help people, but not necessarily long-term, okay? It's a great organization. It's where I give my charity money each year. There's not much charity money that I give, but the bit that I do every year, I donate a little bit to the Heroes Initiative. I think that they're great for helping creators with, bills to stay alive, but it's not like they have millions in their coffers. I really wouldn't know how royalties are. I would assume that there are royalties through Marvel Unlimited, but I have no idea how they calculate it. Yeah, exactly. Neil Adams did get WB to give Siegel and Schuster a one-time pretty helpful fee. We gotta guilt trip Marvel to help Peter David. I guess Neil Adams was right all along. Marvel is full of jerks this whole time. It comes and goes. It comes and goes. But the bigger problem isn't necessarily Marvel. It is sincerely like our healthcare system. Because, for instance, if Peter David happened to be a writer from England or Sweden or Japan, he wouldn't be in the same. If he was from Canada, he wouldn't be in the same predicament. I'm gonna move on. But hopefully, I've put this out there. If you're in a position to even give a couple bucks, looks like it could really help this family. There is a Joe Quesada project at Marvel. What? I thought Joe Quesada left Marvel. Well, he's been working on something for a long time. So, today, Marvel announced an upcoming 6-issue series that's going to bring back their former editor-in-chief, Joe Quesada. Let's see. We got to guilt trip corporate America to do better. Yeah, sort of. I mean, we can't guilt trip a company, but we can guilt the people that actually operate that company. Yeah, the world to come looks interesting. And boy, does Joe look like he spent a lot of time on his art in the pictures that they've shared. So Quesada will illustrate. He also sort of co-wrote the story. It's going to be scripted by Christopher Priest, famous for his run on Black Panther from Marvel Knights. And it's going to serve as sort of a final story from the Marvel Knights imprint that Quesada had started with Jimmy Palmiotti back in 1998. Hugely, hugely popular and influential. Not every book. The Punisher one, at first, their initial attempt sounded like it could have worked. I mean, Bernie Wrightson and stuff, but it kind of flopped. But then they got Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. So, yeah. I think that this is kind of cool. This is an era that I would like to remember. I would be curious to see what they do with it. As far as the story, it's set in a near future where the world is all after Wakanda's vibranium after the Black Panther passes away. Sure. Makes sense. What? He's the Deathbringer? I think he's got a good marketing sense, and I do like his artwork. I will say that I've always respected his artwork. Sure. Well, you're never going to like everything that somebody makes, and I also think that was a terrible story. Bad idea. But there's so many good ones that I could point to as well as all. And I just like to try to take it all as what holistically, take everything into account. Ennis Dillon is one of the greatest teams in comics. Totally agree. Big fan of them. Big fan. And it came at the right time for me. In the 90s, yeah, that was the right time for me. Especially as the 90s were ending, really. Because, the 90s started really cool with, all those image creators and everything. Then it kind of, really dipped in the middle, in terms of where the industry was health-wise. Really bad. But, came out of it really strong. The directors have revealed which comics they're going to use for Secret Wars. You know what? Why did I even include this? Yeah, guess what? They say that they're going to use both Secret Wars and Secret Wars. Why did I even include this? This is such a... Sometimes I grab things as I come across them for the week, and I'm like, yeah, that's potential news. That's potential news. The last, the day of today, I'll usually decide, okay, these are the best or most interesting stories. I really need to cut this, and this. This is but Joe and Anthony Russo are promoting their new movie on Netflix, which is just getting savaged by the critics and is the most expensive film ever made. But I'll also say that since it's on Netflix, it'll probably get watched by enough people to justify it. Anyway, the directors were on Tech Radar promoting that movie, but they were asked about Avengers. And Joe Russo said, well, we always create our own version of the story, so we use the comics as loose inspiration. Really? That's every comic book movie ever. But as you know, I grew up on the original run. That's something that got me into Marvel comic books. I do believe him there. The Hickman run is also fantastic, and they're very different from each other in a lot of ways, so we'll draw inspiration from both of them. Yes, of course. Why did I even include that? Zaid, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your last promo stream. Just an update on our book, Psycho Slumber. Proof copies are on their way to us, going to print super soon. Thanks again. Yeah, dude, that cover you got by Doug Mahnke is just incredible. So good luck with that. That sounds awesome. Like, Mahnke is definitely a favorite artist of mine. How many favorites do I have? I've narrowed it down to 237. No top 10 lists on Comic Tropes After Dark. My 237 favorite comic book artists. Next week, my 563 second most favorite artists. And then we'll have honorable mentions of another 2,389. Colossus and Human Torch both fell in love with an alien, yeah. I hear you like Secret Wars in your Secret Wars. Marvel Secret Wars, the Secret Wars of the Secret Wars. I like the original Secret Wars, and I did like Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars as well. Secret Wars 2, not a fan. Not a good follow-up, but that's okay. Victoria's Secret Wars. Shh, it's Comic Tropes After Dark, and it's time for some Victoria's Secret Wars. I would watch look, is this shallow? Is this controversial? I would watch a movie about boobs battling. Victoria's Secret Wars would appeal. All right. I am taking way too long to go over these news items, aren't I? Sadie Sink has allegedly been cast in Spider-Man 4. Okay. Spider-Man 4. It's currently scheduled for July 30th, 2026. Director Destin Daniel Cretton. I liked Shang-Chi. I'd be curious. He sounds like a fine director for that. So far, the only confirmed cast member before Sadie Sink was Tom Holland. You know, we haven't heard anything about even like, Zendaya or whatever. I don't know. This week, Deadline reported that Sadie Sink has been cast, and as to what she's been cast as, no word. I do think she's a good actress. Beyond Stranger Things, which everybody's seen, probably a lot of you saw The Whale, and I saw that, and it's a very depressing movie, but it's a valid, it's a worthy subject matter and character to analyze, and she was pretty interesting and complex. So she's good. Well, that's what fans are asking. They're like, okay, is this an alternate reality version of Mary Jane Watson? Is this, for some reason, somebody like Black Cat, a new romantic interest? Could it be a villain? I had not heard Firestar. I mean, maybe. See, but you're all thinking specific to Spider-Man. And I will say, the MCU Spider-Man is very tied into the Marvel Universe. That's sort of why they're getting to use him in a lot of ways. It's not like they're just doing another Spider-Man movie and there's a little bit of dressing. We've had Nick Fury, Doctor Strange, who was in the first one? Oh, Iron Man, excuse me. So what if it's something more Marvel-y than Spider-Man specific, right? If they give us Angelica Jones and Iceman, I'm all in. If you bring me back Spider-Man and his amazing friends and do an updated version of that cartoon theme song, I grew up with that. I would love it. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be a blast. That would be a blast. Anyway, so Deadline reported this. To be clear, Marvel and Sony they haven't said anything about it. Deadline doesn't really report rumors, so I'm sure that they have corroboration, but has it actually been signed, or is it just like about to sign? She was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast this week. And they asked her flat out if she would be playing someone like the fan-rumored Jean Grey. She played it coy. She said it was news to her. That's what they all do. They asked if she spoke with Kevin Feige, and she replied, here's a little quote. "No, I have nothing to say about this. The rumors are really cool, though. It's an awesome rumor. It's a great character, so it's cool to read." Yeah, maybe. You know what? I hadn't heard that, but in a way, that sounds like the most realistic. I feel like they would love to introduce like Spider-Gwen and Miles to the MCU somehow. I really do. I really think that they would love to introduce those characters. But it could be interesting if they were to introduce the X-Men as supporting characters in this world. I don't know how that would work. I can't think of a specific... The closest storyline I can think of is in Ultimate Spider-Man. Spider-Man dated Kitty Pryde for a while. I always thought that was actually really an interesting aspect of the original Ultimate comics. Just having them sort of the same age and into each other. But I don't know. Jean Grey. She could play it. I don't know what role Jean Grey would have in a Spider-Man 4. Yeah, Carly Cooper, exactly. They could just give her like a supporting role that like there's plenty others like that could be cool, but like have sort of been forgotten. Jean DeWolf. Jean DeWolf was a really cool character, but she's probably not old enough to play that one. Jean DeWolf was a detective that Spider-Man became like a really close ally with. Jean DeWolf was a really cool character. Kitty Pryde Star-Lord on MCU. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, speculate away. I believe that she probably has been cast, but as to who, no idea. Bad Idea announced some huge sales numbers. Oh, this populated weird, so I'll just put it all up. So they announced that Planet Death #0 has sold 655,000 copies, making it the biggest selling book since Wildcats #1 back in '92. That's how far back you have to go to beat 655. I think Berserker was like 615,000, so that was pretty damn high. If we count all the sort of like reprints for things like Absolute Batman and Ultimate Spider-Man and Transformers, they're all going to get pretty close to that. But anyway, that's what they're saying. The book was sold in bundles of 25 copies for $7.50 to comic book shops. So it was sold pretty inexpensively. I wouldn't be surprised to see some copies of this at comic book stores for Free Comic Book Day. That would be up to the store, but I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see. So it's written by Derek Kolstad, writer of John Wick and Nobody. Comic writer Robert Venditti, art by Tomas Giorello, and colors by Dave Stewart. Dave Stewart's incredible. And it follows the only surviving Space Marine guy. They drop onto a planet. They're all wiped out instantly except for one guy, so he has to sneak behind enemy lines to get home. I've seen some of the pages. I will say the artwork by Giorello, pretty gorgeous. Pretty gorgeous. It's not owned by David Lapham. I don't think he has any ownership stake in it, but yes, he has done some work with them. Not 100% sure. I mean, probably in the long-term scheme of things, but it doesn't look bad. I'll tell you that. It looks, it reminds me in some ways of something like Rogue Trooper, if you ever read that 2000 AD comic. Rogue Trooper's awesome. Rogue Trooper's cool. It's all in the execution. John Wick movies have hardly any story. Some things don't need to be plot-based. They can be character-based. I would call John Wick more character-based. Because you're right. Like, as soon as you get into, like, some of the lore, it starts getting pretty silly. And I like the John Wick movies, but they're, like, in the second movie, they're all like, I will trade you this coin in exchange for a coin that says that I'm allowed to kill your worst enemy. Like, oh, but if you take this coin, it means that you've sworn a blood oath to me and you have to kill my worst enemy. Not so fast. The homeless are also secret assassins and they have coins. I like John Wick for the fights and for the character. In fact, I think 4, oh man, there's this huge fight scene like where he has to get to the top of this really long set of stairs in France. It's so good. But you're right, it's not a deep story. It's not a deep story. I think the art for this looks awesome. Hey Chris, I gotta ask you something. As an aspiring artist, what makes Alex Toth very special? Because some of the artists I like are inspired by him. I was wondering if you ever made a video on him. He's popped up here and there as somebody I've talked about a little. Someday I'll make a dedicated episode. What's impressive about Toth is, well, there's several things. But first of all, it is his character design work. And ultimately, he has a real economy of line art that he does not need lots of superfluous lines. Great rendering, but it doesn't matter because like everything you need to know is almost just in the shapes of in the silhouette. Really good storyteller. He knows what you need to set an introductory panel showing the environment and what's important in it. Varies up the angles, tells great action, great at storytelling. Honestly, he's an artist where he can just hit everything and he could work fast when he wanted to. So he's just a master. Oh, well, we talked about it for quite a while at the beginning. I found it disturbing. Someday. Yeah, Norm Brayfogel's a great artist too. I'd love to talk about him. Marvel launched a new Thunderbolts series, or is launching a new Thunderbolts series. A couple little things about it that I found interesting. First of all, it also has an asterisk, like the movie does. I assume they'll have a different reason for it, that isn't somehow plot important. I feel like the movie Thunderbolts is going to sort of end, and like the asterisk will like be something like, psych, they're the Dark Avengers, something like that, right? I think that like instead of this, the Thunderbolts maybe sort of beginning with a twist like the comics, it might end with a twist, and that's what the asterisk could be for. I could be way off on that. That's based on like literally nothing. It's based on nothing. But I don't know what this is. Anyway, sure, it makes sense that they're doing a Thunderbolts comic, but it doesn't look like the team matches what's on screen at all. Marvel says for the plot, demented duplicates of the Illuminati, that's powerful, are threatening the world, and if they figure out how to work together, they'll be as unstoppable as the originals. Bucky and Natasha need allies who will do anything to take the duplicates out. I'm like, okay, sure, I guess I can believe them working with Wolverine, Clea, Namor, and Hulk. Carnage? I don't see him working well with anybody. Yeah, thank you. Alex Toth is a genius. I assume that they'll be teasing like their will they, won't they through this. It's a very powerful team, I'll say that. A sorcerer, like a super powerful mutant, like the strongest character they've got, like basically a guy that could go toe-to-toe with him, plus has like an undersea kingdom. The two best like spies in the world, and then like the world's most dangerous serial killer. What? Wait, is he? Oh, that would make sense. Okay, so Eddie Brock isn't the current Venom, so maybe he got the Carnage symbiote. Okay, that would make a little bit of sense. But if that's the case, they should have Carnage redesigned just like the way Tony Moore designed Venom to be Agent Venom, you know? I don't know what's going on with them these days. I understood what you mean, but thank you for the support. That's really, really nice. That's really nice. Okay, Eddie is Carnage. Well, then that does help explain things a little bit more, that it's not a serial killer on the team, but they should change this outfit. Should make him more like military. Flash Thompson is a soldier. Or, oh, but it's not Flash Thompson. It's Eddie Brock, you're saying. Oh, all right. There's too many Venoms and Carnages out there. Oh, my God. I can't keep it straight. Eddie is Carnage. Abed is Batman. Yes. Yes. Eddie as Carnage has his own book. Oh, my God. I can't keep up with it all, and I try. I don't know if I do suggest any other run other than, like, I forget who took over right after Kurt Busiek, but like the original Volume 1 did continue after Busiek left, and a lot of the plot threads kept going, which was cool. But I don't know that I've never really been that into the idea of sort of the Thunderbolts as things like, you know, a government team or something like that. I like the Thunderbolts legit being, at first, bad guys pretending to be superheroes, and then a bunch of characters that were not necessarily evil, but were still like on the run for different reasons and pretending to be superheroes. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, Kurtz is the best, and it's a steep cliff after that, just because it was so high. Like that, I made an episode because I think the original Thunderbolts really, really good comics. I've heard that like there have been good runs. Jeff Parker, Jim Zub has had 2 runs. I've heard that the run where it was like, you know, Thunderbolt, Ross, and Elektra and Punisher was decent, but I'm not an expert on all of that. What are we? Some kind of Thunderbolts? Suicide Squad? Thunderbolts? We're Thunderbolts. We are legally Thunderbolts. Do you think the Thunderbolts in the MCU has the chance to be like the comic version? No way will it be able to mirror it exactly. The closest thing I could imagine would be something like maybe they'd kill off one of the like the lesser known characters like Taskmaster, but like it's still in like a costume, and maybe that could be a villain. Could be Baron Zemo, could be like a newer villain. Do you know what I mean? Like I could see them sort of like hiding a villain in the Taskmaster suit. That's the most close to the comics that I can get. Moving on. Comes out June 11th. Oh, variant cover by Mark Bagley, though. Original Thunderbolts artist. That's cool. And Mark Bagley doesn't do a whole lot anymore. So, yeah. I think probably Superman. I think there's a little more interest in that. But if Fantastic Four is good, it will have legs. As long as it's good, it will do well. Yeah, Taskmaster and or Ghost, both of them could die. They both have masks. They could both be basically, and they both have like sort of powers that could be in ways duplicated. So you could like stealth hide a villain, like a newer, not the original like movie Taskmaster or Ghost. You could swap them out somehow, or both. Hickman is writing a new Marvel Cosmic series. I've got some opinions. So they announced, Marvel did, a 4-issue limited series by Hickman, Jonathan Hickman, designed to re-energize their cosmic characters. And I can understand that. I think that Marvel has a lot of great cosmic ideas, characters, aliens, empires, but it hasn't been that exciting since about Annihilation. Annihilation was great, and the second Annihilation was pretty darn good too. After that, you know, what do you have? Like the Guardians of the Galaxy run by Brian Michael Bendis did all right, but cosmic stuff hasn't been used a whole lot. I mean, you do have Silver Surfer Black by Trad Moore, and that's dope, but it's not really connected in a big way to the rest of everything. Anyway, Marvel says this: with groundbreaking developments for Hulks, Black Panthers, Novas, Guardians, and Cosmic Kings and Queens, Imperial lays the foundation for an entire new landscape of interconnected space set stories, making it the must-read comic book of the summer. Well, thanks, Marvel. Art by Federico Vicentini and Eben Coelho. But this is my question. What was the result of Gods? Because I do really like Jonathan Hickman. Let me put that out there. I think Ultimate Spider-Man right now is fantastic. I loved, as I said earlier, Secret Wars, his Secret Wars run, and then like the Avengers runs that he had leading up to that, building up to that. Great. Huge fan of East of West. A lot of Jonathan Hickman stuff I love. But Gods was like, we're going to like reimagine all these cosmic entities, and it's going to be like, shift the whole Marvel universe. Good artwork. I feel like it amounted to nothing. Nobody knew what to do with it after Jonathan Hickman finished his story. And I kind of lost interest. I was like, I don't know. It was just too unwieldy for me. That's a very fair point. Yep. The Thanos stuff by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw was pretty darn cool. I didn't read their Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, Gods kind of flopped, right? I don't know how it sold, but I felt like it was a flop. So I'm sort of like, it's hard to get excited for this new thing that's like, Jonathan Hickman is back with another way to like redo the cosmic world of Marvel. It's like, yeah, but Gods didn't really... I don't even remember what God stands for. I tried to, but I can't remember. I'd have to just Google it. Fantastic Four is good. I'll also say the House of X Powers of 10, 12 issues, like 6 and 6, that was fantastic. The whole idea of building the Krakoan era of the X-Men was a fantastic idea that I think did go on too long, but the stuff Hickman set up was pretty awesome. Pretty fantastic, in my opinion. Yeah, I've been watching Born Again. Episode 3 was my favorite thus far. It's sad, but it's I love when Daredevil is just Matt Murdock in a courtroom working a case, and that works so well on TV. I thought episode 3 was great. Probably ? Gods was something. All right. Has Sergeant Rock been cast? Well, Deadline reported that actor Colin Farrell is in discussions to join director Luca Guadagnino's Sergeant Rock adaptation. By the way, I only remembered this like a couple days ago when I was talking with Jimmy Jams. He had seen the remake of Suspiria. I had forgotten that was Luca Guadagnino that did that because I was like, I loved that remake. I thought it was a great movie. Anyway, going back to Sergeant Rock. Farrell, he already plays Penguin for DC, but that isn't part of the DCU, so I guess he could play 2 DC characters at once. There's still no word on any specific comic book story that it would adapt or when it would be scheduled. The only thing we do know is that the DCU heads, James Gunn and Peter Safran, said they wouldn't be greenlighting any DC movies until there was a complete script that they liked. They wouldn't just go off of like an idea. So they probably have a script. Probably. I think that would be awesome if like you just took Penguin with his like, his fat suit and his scars and stuff, and then put a helmet on him, and we're like, Sergeant Rock, folks. And then they can tie it into the DCU or the DCU into Batman by saying like, and Sergeant Rock had some illegitimate kids, but with the last name like Cobblepot. Oh, of course I've seen the original. The original is fantastic. It's not quite giallo because the killer isn't, like sneaking around with black gloves, like putting knives in people's backs. But the colors, the primary colors in that movie, the music by Goblin, it's great. Great movie. Great. I wouldn't say no to that idea, actually. I wouldn't say no to that. Sergeant Penguin. Yeah, DC has not used Sergeant Rock a whole lot. They've probably done like reprints to keep the copyright and trademark and all that alive, but I don't think that they've done like hardly anything in terms of like a new story with Sergeant Rock. Well, no, excuse me, just remembered. just remembered. Bruce Campbell did that great Sergeant Rock versus Zombies story last year. That was pretty darn good. With Eduardo Risso on art. Yes, please. A Vermont comic shop was robbed. Just spreading the word here. But it does have some closure, too. So last Sunday, the 9th, Ray Gun Comics in Brattleboro, Vermont was broken into. A local man was arrested. He's facing multiple charges after police say he broke in and just stole the cash register. So this isn't like a case of somebody going in and grabbing all the slabbed comics up front. Grab the cash register. Old-fashioned crime. Where was Spider-Man? The 36-year-old man that was arrested, he was seen on local business security cameras, identified. He's being held on a $200 bond. That implies to me that he didn't get away with too much in that cash register, because there are, like, you know, it was at least under $5,000. It might have been under $1,000. Like, that is a really low bond. All right, and I've got Diamond distribution updates. All right, so people saying that they're owed money by Diamond. The Pokemon Company said that they're owed over $500,000. The Pokemon Company has filed claims for unpaid inventory. Over $500,000. Dynamic Forces, that includes the comics by Dynamite, say that they're owed $158,000 and change by Diamond. Although these numbers fluctuate up and down. At one point, like, I know Nick Barucci had said that it was closer to like $250,000, but there's probably only so much you can prove on the books, I guess. I don't know. Diamond's chief marketing officer, still working there, Catherine Govier, says that she's owed $161,499.54 in unpaid wages as of March 1st. Yikes. Why still work there then? I don't get that. I don't know. The bankruptcy auction takes place second week of April, so we should know pretty soon what the ultimate fallout of all of that. Diamond's gonna get Mewtwo and Charizard sent after them. Oh, that's pretty bad, right? And Pikachu? Oh my God, that's a lot of trouble. That is a lot of unpaid wages. Diamond has just reported they found another cheaper way of shipping and will pay off debts if people use them. That's convenient, but okay. Maybe. I don't know. Meanwhile, Storm King, they're more of a, well, certainly an indie publisher. They signed with a new distributor. So Storm King Comics has signed a deal with SCB Distribution for distribution in the United States and globally English language markets for their collected editions. If you don't know SCB, they are an indie distributor. They've been around since '88, and they distribute for publishers you may have heard of, like Silver Sprocket and Last Gasp. So Storm King, that was founded by Sandy King Carpenter. They focus on horror, and they've got this book coming out. This is their next big one on May 20th. John Carpenter presents George A. Romero's The Amusement Park. That's going to be a comics version of a planned collaboration between those two horror directors that just never came to be. But yeah, John Carpenter and Romero were going to work together to make The Amusement Park. I've heard of this movie. It's almost a documentary, very found footage-like. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's cool that it's coming out as a story anyway. Last piece of news I have. This is local, but I just wanted to spread the word to anyone in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle Museum launched a manga history exhibit. So March 8th, it actually launched. The Seattle-based Mopop Museum of Pop Culture Museum launched a history of manga exhibit. And wait, yeah, but they didn't make it together. I don't know when I have time to go. I mean, I would have gone by now if I could have carved out the time. I really do want to see this thing. It's called Asian Comics, Evolution of an Art Form, and it showcases the evolution of visual storytelling from traditional graphic forms to modern digital innovations. Features the largest ever selection of original Asian comic artworks, over 400 pieces from countries such as, of course, Japan, but we've got China, Bhutan, Cambodia, India, Vietnam, all represented. Pretty cool. Some of the things that they talk about: history, differences by geography, adapting folklore. I like that aspect. Censorship and making stories for adults, and multimedia adaptations of these. So it all sounds really, really cool. I got to get that Cosmic Cube to add extra hours to the day. Yes. Washington State has an event the first Thursdays of every month. You can get into museums for free. I don't think it's this one, though, because this is like a private museum, not like, a government-funded museum. Chris I didn't turn you down. I just said I don't know when I'm going to get to go. In front of 238 people. 240 now. I would love to go with you, Dave. I sincerely would. If we can find a day that works for both of us, I would totally go. The Mopop Museum is cool. It's a nice place. So that's what I've got for news. Now it's time to add the comic book review portion of the week, because there were some really cool comics that came out this week. Here we go. Just setting up my camera. Gonna scooch over some comical books. I gave a viewer emotional damage, and I'm proud of it because it was Dave. I would never want to do that to any of you, but Dave deserves it, and he knows why. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I did see that. Gail Simone and Zack Snyder are going to do a comic together based on the character Nemesis from that Rebel Dawn series of movies that Zack Snyder did. Yeah, I tried to watch Rebel Dawn. I couldn't get into it. Or Rebel Moon, that's what it was, right? I tried. I watched about 30 to 40 minutes of the first movie, and I just was not feeling it. Oh yeah, okay, so present extra camera. I didn't bring that up yet. Wait, what? Did I not plug it in right? Oh, yeah, bear with me. I put the wrong plug in. I'm an idiot. Let's try that again. USB mode connecting. Yeah, that's what I need. Oh, I'm such a pro at this. I need a producer. I need an editor and a producer or something like that. Wait, no, I did have the right. Hold on, I had the right plug-in originally. This is strange. Give me a second, folks. I'm having a technical issue. I'm a little confused. Okay, that's plugged in. It's charged all the way. Zoom in. Let's try this one more time. Okay, I got it. Thanks for your patience. I think I can fine-tune the focus. Hold on. Let me get that. Yeah. I think that's a little better. Just showing this real quick. Look at that. This is my favorite Ninja Turtle. I already have this issue from last week. We already talked about it, but a variant cover by my friend Khary Randolph. I think Khary's incredible. I think that's really dynamic. And if you don't know, Khary and colorist Emilio both worked on the cartoon, the second cartoon, the one where they actually look, like serious ninjas instead of cartoony. So, yeah, I just wanted to show off that I picked it up. I don't get variant covers too often, but if they're priced, regular cover price and it's by an artist I really admire, I'm happy to pick one up. And I just like Donatello. I thought that looked really, really cool. And honestly, Emilio adds a lot to this with the colors that he did in the background. They don't distract, they just highlight. Really nice. So we had a bunch of comics. I guess I didn't get that many, but we had Transformers and Void Rivals, so 2 Energon books. We also had 2 Daniel Warren Johnson books because The Moon is Following Us came out. Had Napalm Lullaby by Bengal and Remender. I got the latest Absolute Superman by Rafa Sandoval and Jason Aaron. And the latest Redcoat by Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch. What should I start with? What do people want to hear about? Superman? Moon is Following Us? Transformers? What should I talk about? What do people want to hear first? Any votes? I like Ninja Turtles right now. It's pretty good. It's like a good fresh reboot. Maybe Moon is Following Us? I could easily talk about that a bit. Napalm Lullaby, Moon again, Absolute Superman, Napalm Lullaby, Soups, Daniel Warren Johnson, Mooney, Superman. Okay, well, I'll do them all, folks. I'm going to start with The Moon is Following Us, okay? So that we're not doing this for too long. Thank you all for that. So, oh my God. The Moon is Following Us is starting to impress me in a certain way. I went into this and at first I was like, this is good. I like it. The art's cool. The premise is cool. But I wasn't as emotionally hooked as I have been in some other Daniel Warren Johnson books. But there's a reason for that. And it took a few issues for me to understand. This is paced very differently. This has been a slow burn, building up our awareness of the world before we pull the rug out from under some of the main characters. And you know what? If he'd done that too soon, it might have distracted too many plot elements. It might have distracted from the characters, and I wouldn't have cared as much about what was happening to them. But now, by issue 7, we recently had something where we learned that, like, Duncan and what's his wife's name? All of a sudden, I'm forgetting. Is it Sam? I totally forget all of a sudden. But yeah, Sam and Duncan. Okay. They are in a dream world to save their daughter who won't wake up. That's the gist of things if you haven't read this. Recently, we found out how powerful their daughter's nightmares are and that they're allies. That's cool. But now we're learning that this world creates and amplifies the things that you've had as dreams. Creates and amplifies them. So at first it was kind of funny, like you see lots of somewhat goofy looking characters and stuff, and the parents each got weapons that are like, based on child logic. Like, what would I say? Okay, so like Duncan, for instance, has his daughter's child safety seat for the car, but it's absolutely unbreakable. Like she thought that the child safety seat just cannot be destroyed. And so that's like his weapon. And she also, the daughter, because she's a kid, had the misunderstanding that sharks can't die. So the wife has put like a shark's head on a staff and uses it like, a weapon because it can eat anything in front of her. All right. But I'm describing too much. But what's cool about it is that the parents are realizing, even though they're in their daughter's dream, elements of what they've had as nightmares have made it into this world and are not their allies because they're trying to save their daughter. And oh my God, I won't give it away, but there's a huge twist of like what Duncan has as a nightmare. And it's honestly pretty damn disturbing. It's pretty out there, folks. It's pretty serious, and you probably couldn't have done that too soon in this book. So while it still has all these amazing like creatures and battle scenes and everything, it also has some real heart to it, and it took a while to get there and to earn this. So it's paced a little slower than some of the other books I've read by Dan, like I don't know, Wonder Woman Dead Earth, or Murder Falcon, Do a Powerbomb. But yeah, what they're doing is really great. And I say they because Riley Rossmo is a really great fit for this title. Yeah, I'm going to stop there before I go too far and like reveal anything. But look at that. And you know what else is nice is that these colors by Mike Spicer are much closer to what we used to get in comics throughout the Bronze Age with it's not quite flat colors. There's some rendering to the detail, but it's not overly rendered. So all the line art still stands out really strong. You know, you can still make out the characters. It was a problem for a long time with color having too much detail, being too painterly, and covering up all the beautiful detail of the line art. And some of the cool aspect of comics is it doesn't need to be realistic art. You know, we're dealing, it's not realistic that we'd have black lines around our fingers. That's not what's real. In comics, though, we read that as real. But yeah, like that line art always looks great by an artist, and you don't want to like risk masking that with colors that don't aid it, and you don't want to have too many contrasts that like make glancing at a page hard. So you know, like this page doesn't quite have pastel, but you know, it has some sort of easterly colors that complement one another, and you can like look at that and pick it apart. Like, you know, this character is in the foreground, that's the background, that's the sky, but none of it is like competing for our attention, and that yellow doesn't hurt our eyes. Some really great art, and the story has really started paying off for me. So I'm glad I stuck with it, since I wasn't initially as excited as some others. It's really paying off. It's really good. As long as I'm on Daniel Warren Johnson stuff, I'll shift over to Transformers. I'm not going to recap everything, but one thing I noticed that I liked is just how well the book moves around from subplot to subplot. Like, not subplot, but it moves around with a bunch of different characters. There's a good cast, but there's stuff happening right now with heroes on Cybertron, their home planet. There's stuff happening with a character, Ultra Magnus, who's going through very severe PTSD. There's a huge battle going on in Seattle between different factions of the Decepticons, and the Autobots are just, they can't stop the battle. It's too big. All they can do is try to save all the people in the city. So that's a lot of different like things that we're switching between, but it's all paced well. Like, and just when it gets, you're like, oh my gosh, you know, like what's going to happen with the Ultra Magnus plot? And I'm really interested. And then it switches to a different plot. Good pacing. But let me show you something cool that Jorge Corona did. He did, like, there is a battle in this where, if you don't know Transformers, sometimes there's like groups of 5 or 6 of them that can merge together to form a giant Transformer, okay? And so like these two different sides of bad guys, they've got a guy called Bruticus versus a guy called Devastator, all right? And they're fighting at the top of a skyscraper here. Look at this 2-page spread. Let me change my angle to this just so you can see it. A 2-page spread of the green guy, Devastator, basically given something like a DDT or, you know, like a wrestling move to Bruticus off the top of a skyscraper. 2-page spread here, really extreme perspective for the characters. Some interesting choices on, like, you know, the extreme foreground here of this skyscraper has lots of motion blur lines added to it. But I'm glad that that's an inking effect as compared to just like blurring the actual like image. I see this battle and all I hear is Linkin Park in the background. Jorge Corona is really something special. I'm so honored that he and his wife were able to jump onto Trash Movie Bonanza the other week and talk about Step Up to the Streets. Oh my God! It's a superplex off the top rope! You're an idiot, Starscream. You never give me superplexes. He's doing a diamond cutter. Okay. Yeah, I guess he is. He's broken in half. But look at how, like, again, this is Mike Spicer, right? Yep, Mike Spicer. What did he do for the background here? He didn't color every single building or make it like, say, black with light shining out of every building. And he could have. And that would have been distracting. It wouldn't have worked. Instead, he's got this perfect gradient of like the brightest lights are at the bottom and the darkest are towards the top. And it just all helps add to the depth of this without making all this amazing detail of the city a distraction. It could have all competed for our attention if everything was rendered the same way. And that isn't realistic, is it? That this is basically all one tone, the city. That isn't realistic, but it doesn't matter. It means it reads well and it feels realistic. The verisimilitude is there. I love what he's doing with the artwork, Jorge Corona. It has energy. There are still angles to things and indications that these guys turn into things like that looks like a bulldozer, this arm here. Here, I'll zoom in a little again since we've seen what this 2-page spread is. Bear with me. Yeah, that is a bulldozer. So we've got those details, like this is a cement mixer. But it doesn't like dwell on that to like make all these leg and groin pieces literally look like parts of a vehicle. We're going to like exaggerate a little to give it like some proportions that we can recognize. It's a good decision. It gives it an energy and a readability. And then this is the last thing I'll point out for good storytelling, okay? Here's a scene where Optimus Prime is reacting to what's happening. So what's most important here is that we're showing the character. And he doesn't really have a mouth or pupils or anything, so we're going to have to do that through gesture. And I think Jorge Corona has done that. Like, that's a surprise gesture. You're looking up, arms spread out, like, but reaching up like, oh my God. That's good gesture. That's the most important thing. But then he added a second thing. He's telling 2 actions with 1 panel, which is very impressive. Jorge decided to add a glass mirrored building behind Optimus Prime, so we can actually see the 2 Decepticons falling in the background. And in person, trust me, this looks much more clear. But to show the action of both what Optimus Prime is reacting to and his reaction, that's very impressive storytelling. That's a clever little decision to add this, mirrored image there. It sounds small, but it's not small. It's a really clever decision. It's good gesture. Didn't notice that initially. Just little things that I want to point out that you could look at this and just be like, okay, it's robots fighting. And maybe that doesn't do it for me. I could understand if that's the case, but I think that they've built up the personalities, that there's stakes involved here. There's a lot of scenes that like indicate to me that the Autobots are heroes because they're spending all their efforts to save lives. Like this panel here, sort of an establishing shot of a big battle going in the ground, and there's just tons and tons of people running away, and the Autobots are just making sure that they're safe. And I like that. But there's also these amazing decisions like how scared Ultra Magnus gets when some U.S. Army soldiers come up, which are really no threat to a huge robot with a big gun. But because of his PTSD, he can't deal with it. Like there's a helicopter coming in, and when Ultra Magnus looks at it, he just sees that light as the Decepticon Shockwave's face. It's a really cool panel here. Just like we're seeing things from his perspective. And he's just terrified. it's I really, really enjoy this book because I care about the characters, even though they're technically aliens and robots. But the action is fun, and it means something because I care about the characters. They have some really good decisions, not just with how they're writing these characters, but how they're actually pacing it with the story, going from plot to plot at just the right time, showing the heroes actually being heroic, having them do cool things with their powers. Like Rumble's a guy whose arms turn into like pistons and he just makes little earthquakes usually, right? Well, in this, his master, Soundwave, just throws him at a rocket ship, and he just uses that to cleave off the whole wing of the whatchamacallit, space shuttle. And so it crashes. But that's cool. That's really cool. Since I'm talking about Energon universe stuff, oh yeah, I'll just go back real quick. Just so you know, this cover, I believe, I'm not 100%, but I'm like 90% sure that this image was something Daniel Warren Johnson drew for Skybound for their pitch to Hasbro to let them have the title. I'm pretty sure that this was drawn like about 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, as part of their pitch to get the Transformers license. So carries a lot of weight. And that would make sense because in the comics right now, Starscream actually doesn't have his lower body. But as a pitch, it makes a lot more sense. It just looks amazing. Void Rivals probably doesn't get quite as much attention sometimes as Transformers and G.I. Joe, just because those are well-known properties. But this is the one that has Robert Kirkman, so it sort of balances out. Void Rivals has stealth become... It's about new characters, original characters, but it's a Transformers book at its heart. It is very much in this universe. They introduce a new cosmic villain called Goliath, right? That was like threatening Transformers, and he got trapped in the void that was like created by some powerful Transformers. He's been trapped, and he's going to come out of it one day, and they got to be ready for it. And basically, we get a huge backstory on these aliens, the new characters that are the main characters in Void Rivals. We now understand why their world was built, this ring around a void. There's a reason for it all. And so like it's all tied to Transformers. It's just Transformers lore that we've never heard before and goes way back in time. And I like that. I think it's really cool that like Robert is focusing on a very different aspect of Transformers, less the war and more as like cosmic gods, cosmic entities in space, and treating that like, its own big, broad mythology, a tapestry to build on. Void Rivals picked up when the story broadened past the two main characters. It did. There's still like the core that like is driving the story forward, progressing things, but we're learning a lot more, and we get a lot, like there's a lot of supporting characters in this book, and they're all from the animated movies, although they're like reimagined for this. So like, for instance, the animated G.I. Joe movie introduced Cobra Law, and in the comics, Cobra Law hates technology so much that they've sent some of their soldiers out into space, including Pythona, to destroy Transformers now that they know they exist. So they're supporting characters. Or the characters that in the animated movie were set in like the then future of like Hot Rod and Springer and stuff like that. They're like supporting characters in this book. So now we've got G.I. Joe and Transformers characters that are just out in space with Derek and Salila. And we're getting new cool characters like mercenaries and politicians. It's amazing how big this has become. I don't know, in a way, like how Robert had such a big idea. Like I could have seen him like, pitching this is what we want to do with Transformers. This is what we want to do with G.I. Joe. We want to have them be able to cross over. But the idea to have a completely new story that has deep mythology and can use characters from both is really interesting to me. It crosses over in a very different way than it's not just about G.I. Joe and Transformers sort of fighting for some reason, you know? It introduces new characters that feel like they belong. It feels like things are connected in a very real way, and it makes sense. YouTuber North Garden Comics is a super collector of Transformers. I was when I was a kid. I don't know if I've ever talked. I've talked about it on Comic Tropes. I made an episode where I showed like about 30 pages of a Transformers comic I made when I was 10 years old. But I was a big fan when I was young. I was a big fan of Transformers and G.I. Joe. Big fan. And then I sort of dropped off as I got older, you know, and I sold off all my toys too. And sometimes I do wish I had at least a few of those classics. You know, I wish I had my original Snake Eyes and Optimus Prime and Megatron. That would be cool. And on the other hand, I'm glad that I don't have as much stuff, you know. Sometimes you get to a point where you're just like, it is all stuff. Oh my God. I should show him like sometime if I get a chance. But it's not good. It's not good. It's yeah. When I moved across the country 11 years ago, it was just time for Chrissy and I to downsize, and I took that as an opportunity. I sold off all my G.I. Joes, all my Transformers, all my comics, really cheap too. Really cheap, because I had to move quickly to accept the job. How do we get in contact with you to pitch, talk about our pre-existing comics? I don't really have like a show where I just review other people's comics, actually. That's not really what my channels do. I mean, every once in a while on this, I'll announce a live stream where people can come on and pitch their indie comics to the audience, but it's really a casual thing, just trying to give a signal boost. I don't have like I don't have enough time to make dedicated episodes for everybody's comic, unfortunately. I sincerely probably get pitched like 2 to 3 times a day to cover somebody's comic, and I just can't do it. So I was just answering it to put it out there. First monthly comic I collected was the Marvel run of Transformers, bought at Mike Richardson's Pegasus Books. John, I think I've talked about this a little, but that was also my entry point into comics as buying them for myself. I started with G.I. Joe. I quickly went, with Transformers, quickly tried G.I. Joe. I did think G.I. Joe was a better story. And then I started getting, you know, like superhero stuff. Why did I never realize you two were Chris and Chrissy? Yeah. Yep, we are. Too cute, right? Anyway, Void Rivals is quite a good comic. I really think it's fun. I also do wonder, like, you know, how much does Robert own of this if, like, they ever decide to make toys? I don't, you know, presumably he gets something, but I don't know. Another Image book that I'd picked up this week was Napalm Lullaby. Not Image Lullaby, Napalm Lullaby. Now, generally, I'm a huge fan of Rick Remender. So many of his books. I think Grommets right now is absolutely amazing. I thought Holy Roller was something special. Many books in the past that I've loved. Napalm Lullaby, I mostly picked up because I was like, well, I do like Bengal's art. I like Bengal's art. I don't know about the premise, which is sort of like superheroes in a near future that's like ruled by a theocratic cult, like the whole world is. But then we sort of like, we're like, oh, but now we're in like somebody's dreamscape. And now like this issue started with the brother and sister in the 1980s, like our world at the mall, except people don't seem to see her brother, Sam. And I'm like, I've lost the plot. I feel so dumb. I feel so dumb, but you know what? I've lost track of the story. Maybe if I read this in trade paperback, this would make sense. but I just don't understand anymore. It's gone through so many reality shifts. I don't know what's real and what's imaginary right now. So the story has utterly confused me. And I therefore don't understand the exact stakes, because I don't know if this is literally happening or if this is happening in somebody's mind. I feel so dumb. I don't know why the last issue is delayed, but I'm willing to wait. I love it. I think the sister might be having a mental breakdown, and it's affecting everyone that was trapped in that dome. That's what I was leaning towards too, but then why would her sort of fantasy world be based so like a one-to-one on the real world and in the past? I'd be like, well, doesn't that imply that that has to be the reality? I don't know. I don't think you're supposed to know what's going on right now in Napalm Lullaby. Well, that's probably that makes some sense. That legit, I'm supposed to be confused right now. Then I wouldn't feel as dumb. I like the art, but I've lost track of the story. It didn't really work for me. If you're supposed to be confused, that's fair, but it didn't. It's not working for me, really. I don't think we're supposed to know what's happening yet, but some guidance would be appreciated. And I feel like I don't want somebody to have to over-explain things. I've said before, I'm a big fan of David Lynch, and sometimes people are like, will you explain that? And he's got at least one famous interview clip where he goes, no, he just won't. And I like that. I'm like, yeah, it should be on the audience to interpret it. It doesn't matter sometimes what the artist's intended meaning was. What matters is that they got their story out, and then it's up to the audience to interpret that, even if it's wrong. I like that. Yeah, I think Rick is a fan of David Lynch, and I think that he is going for something pretty confusing. I respect that it's risky. I respect that. But at the same time, if I'm confused, it means that, like, right now in the moment, I can't really enjoy it. Now, if my confusion becomes clear and I'm like, oh, what if it means this? Or, then I'm getting something out of it. And having that confusion was worthwhile. But I'm only going to allow myself to be confused for so long before I'm like, well, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's on the writer and artist to still guide me through a story, or at least give me something that I can latch onto and appreciate. So, I don't know. It's okay. Yeah, that's fair. I love maybe 85% of Grant Morrison. And then 15%, I'm like, I don't get it. That wasn't for me. So maybe there's a little of that too for me with Rick Remender. And I admire that Rick tries so many different things. He does a lot of different genres, and he caters it to, the artists that he's collaborating with. And I think that Bengal's a great fit for a lot of the sci-fi stuff, a lot of the sort of more character-based stuff. This is great art, but I'm very confused as to what the story is right now, so I can't really recommend it. What aspects? It's not aspects. It's like certain stories. Like when I read Sea Guy, I didn't really understand what Sea Guy was really about, for instance. Like the Batman and X-Men stuff, I get that. Animal Man, yeah, it's a little esoteric, but I get that. We Three, no problem. It's just every once in a while there's a book like, the only one that's coming to mind right now is Sea Guy, and I was like, I just don't quite get what's happening here. That's all I mean. Sometimes some confusion is good, though, because then once you come upon an understanding, it recontextualizes something that you've already absorbed, and that's a really satisfying feeling. What else is there to talk about? I guess just 2 books. I'll talk about Absolute Superman a little bit. This definitely makes some big changes from the Superman lore that we're used to, in that okay, Krypton is dying, right? And Kal-El's parents have actually created a spaceship big enough to take a bunch of people, not millions, not even thousands, but maybe a couple hundred, maybe. That's interesting right off the bat. It's just that as it's taking off, and the planet is exploding, the ship breaks up. However, being scientists, they did create it so that like the ship is sort of like made of like, we'll call it smart nanotech. And we already know that costume in this is called Sol and talks to him. It's made out of like this dust, Kryptonian dust. It's basically nanotech, okay? But anyway, the big ship reforms into individual pods. So there's a chance in this reality, we don't know, but there's a chance that there could be other Kryptonians. There could even, theoretically, be his parents. And none of them he hasn't encountered any of them. It's just that it's opened the door up to be very different. Because Superman is an orphan in a sense. You know, he's the last son of Krypton. And then they sort of undo that every once in a while. They're like, okay, there's Supergirl. And there's also the Bottle City of Kandor. And there's General Zod, by the way. You know, they undo it little bits at a time. But this is saying like, well, you know, what if, you know, it's not going to be like enough of a population to sort of rebuild their society. But maybe there's some other Kryptonians out there. And I think that's fair because we're getting a Superman, introduced to a Superman in this that grew up on Krypton as a child. He knows his heritage and his history. So he has a more isolated feeling when he's on Earth because he may look like the humans, but he knows that he isn't one. He knows that. Yeah, I will. Kevin is right. Crypto is definitely out there. And I can't wait to see that. Anyway, it's interesting. That said, that's just a little bit of lore in the background. And essentially, this story is about Clark and how he is very tempted to get, you know, revenge on some terrible people on Earth. And he's making a decision to be alone and remember his past and try to be merciful. He's like, for now, I can't go after Peacemaker, Christopher Smith. I can't go after him because if I found him right now with my power, I'd kill him. And that's not who I want to be. It's an interesting bit of character development. He's very lonely, but he's making a choice that's very hard for him. It's the right choice, of course, but we can understand after the past few issues, the horrible thing that like the Lazarus Corporation is doing. I like that it's not, this is a Superman who isn't like just inherently altruistic. He's making a tougher decision because he remembers his people and he sees the problems in our society because he knows a different version and he knows that his society had faults, but he also really looks at like the faults of an alien civilization and is not a fan. He wanted to give John Cena the ultimate attitude adjustment. He's the only Superman. I mean, this is the absolute universe. So it's a parallel universe, you can say. But yes, he's Superman. It's got some interesting ideas, is all I'm trying to say. They're doing some good character work, some interesting world building. I wouldn't say that this is my favorite of the absolute books. I like it, and I like a lot of it because, just to be clear, Rafa Sandoval's art is really good. It's really cool. My favorite is Absolute Wonder Woman, followed by Absolute Batman, which is really good. And then this is fun, but it's not my favorite. But I like this page, like where everything is sort of bathed in red, because Superman is just so angry here. It just emotionally, it reflects how angry he is. It's good. And it's scary, because if he uses his heat vision on a guy with a metal helmet, he could really put that guy in some serious pain very easily. It's a good cover, isn't it? I think this is a good cover. Showing the planet exploding and sort of like just sort of covering him, just sort of like bathing Superman in its debris. That's his home. His home is just sort of like pouring over him like molten lava. It's dramatic. I like it. I think it's cool. Hayden Sherman is really making a name for themselves. Yeah. That's totally fair. Superman is great. Superman is really, really cool. I'm glad they're doing something different with it because we still get regular Superman. So yeah, give me a very different take on it. Let's see how far you can stretch some of these concepts and still say that's very different, but that's still Batman. Or that's completely different than what I expected, but that character is still recognizably Wonder Woman. You know, that's interesting to me to see how far you can stretch some of those ideas. I've heard Dark Patterns is really good right now. I've heard that. I read about the issue where Scarface, as in ventriloquist and Scarface, Scarface, instead of just being a doll, is a whole building. And I love how crazy that idea is. Champion of the oppressed. Yeah. If you can distill the idea of these characters to like, you know, sort of one sentence or something, everything else you start to realize you can play with. It doesn't have to be the same. It can be very different. Oh, okay. So I guess I should be reading Dark Patterns. Last book I'll talk about is it's really just fun this month. Redcoat as a guy that is not inherently good, although he, Simon Pure, he definitely thinks he's more of a scumbag than he is. He's terrible at like staying in touch with people. He's terrible at saving money. He's terrible at lots and lots of things. But when push comes to shove, he does make the morally right choice to help people. It's very hard for him, but he does. And anyway, but this is also a historical fiction book. Look, by the way, look at this 2-page spread of this realistic train. Hitch is great sometimes. That's awesome. In this, he meets Annie Oakley, famous gunsmith, real person, one of the best marksmen to have lived. She had a traveling show. By all accounts, she was just incredible with what she could do. And yeah, it's about him sort of meeting her and kind of falling for her in a big way, to be honest. And the only thing Simon Pure is really good at, and it's just because he's like over 100 years old now, is shooting. And they have like a shooting contest, and they really sort of have a mutual respect. But it builds up to them needing to use their skills to save some hostages that were taken, and how scared Simon is to step up and risk taking the shot. A reluctant good guy, Daniel, is very accurate. I think what's fun for me is I always like Brian Hitch's art. It's just very satisfying to me, the way he renders things. I like how he shades things. I like his choice of angles. I like his dedication to backgrounds and important objects, like making sure that has good detail. I think he does a good job with characters having good expressions, but also being consistent from panel to panel, not necessarily having same face. Sometimes I do see in Simon Pure, who's that? I think he's an Australian actor. He's been in tons of stuff. He was the main guy in the first Pacific Rim movie. He's been in so many things. What actor am I thinking of? He was in Sons of Anarchy. Sometimes I think that that's specifically who he's using as a reference, but I'm not 100% on that. That's an interesting way to say it. Yeah, a Guy Ritchie character set in the 1800s. Like right there. What actor am I thinking of? Don't you think this looks like the guy from Sons of Anarchy and Pacific Rim? Maybe I'm wrong, but I just see a little of that. Anyway, it's a good story. This one, I like that they can play around with history and have them meet real characters in different ways. They sort of did that on the old Indiana Jones Chronicles TV show. Charlie Hunnam. Yeah, Charlie Hunnam. Thank you. You say Chris Hemsworth would play him. I think Chris Pratt can do apparently like a movie a month. Yes, Charlie Hunnam Chicken. That's right. He is playing Leo Patterson. I think that could work very well. You guys agree that that's who he's probably using as like a bit of his main reference? I don't think like every panel looks like it's referencing a specific thing. I think that's just sort of who he has in mind as his character model. So some panels look a little bit like him, but not like every panel. He's got a consistent look. But anyway, I liked it. I liked Redcoat. Good week for comics, honestly. But I like to try to pick a book of the week. And hold on. I'm going to switch it to this. Acknowledge this. Reading Ultimate Spider-Man again. Now on Omnibus 4. The first post-Bagley. As I read, I thought, dang, who did this red-hot art? Imminent. Yes. I'm glad I finally got to do an episode about Stuart Imminent. Big fan of his artwork. Yeah. He really stepped in and you're like, oh, okay, the book is still going strong. Still going darn strong. It's a little tough. I'll say this. This was fun, but didn't do something new. Also, cool lore, good character work, but nothing groundbreaking yet. Napalm Lullaby confused me a little too much. I reserve my right to reassess. Void Rivals is good, but not as good as Transformers. So it comes down to two different books written by Daniel Warren Johnson, Transformers and The Moon is Following Us. And as much as I was impressed with how much this book is stepping up, I just think Transformers right now is on its stride. And therefore, my pick for the Comic Tropes After Dark Book of the Week is Transformers issue 18. Daniel Warren Johnson, Jorge Corona, Mike Spicer, telling an exciting but emotionally relevant story. Great pacing. This particular issue just has some very good storytelling, and I'm really just blown away by what Jorge Corona is doing. So that's my personal pick, Book of the Week. I think Dan is way too busy to watch this. But will I have him on this channel soon? Yes. Descender was a great book. I don't know Descender. That one doesn't come to me. Oh, hold on. Have you read Descender from Lemire and Dustin Nguyen? I'm going to get the collection when it comes out. Who's publishing it? I don't think I know Descender. I respect both Lemire and Nguyen, so potentially interested, but somehow flew under my radar. Bummer. Look at how green I am today with two Godzillas there. Actually, more than that, because I've got Godzillas down here. Godzilla. I think this is my new cardigan, and I think I'm going to wear this to my store signing. So I'll just plug that real quick. Not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, the 26th, from 4 to 6 p.m., I will be signing at Stargazer Comics in Tacoma, Washington. So Wednesday, the 26th, 4 to 6. And I'm doing that because I've got a backup story in Radiant Black issue 32, which comes out that day. So I'll just be there to sort of promote that. Stargazer also has a bunch of my Vampirella covers that they're selling. And I'll have, a very small handful of some of my older stuff, like the Eisner-nominated book Trickster, maybe some of my self-published comics. I don't know if there's enough interest. And I'll probably bring a little bit of original art. I'll only show it for half a second, but this is the page from Radiant Black. And some of the other stuff that I've just drawn recently, just in case people are interested. Yeah, just sketches. Nothing fancy. But if people want to support me, I'll sell it. I ain't too proud. I've heard good things about Assorted Crisis events by Dennis Camp. I may go back and get that issue, yeah. Thumbs up. Beyond that, double salute. I am signing one entire store. I've got the biggest marker known to man. Put it on my shoulder like I'm carrying around a bazooka, and I just draw over everything. It's great. Jim should get a Kong sweater for the next time we're together at like a Comic-Con. Did I hear how Lemire ghosted a comic book store today? No, haven't heard about anything like that. Dressed in green like most Marvel villains from the Silver Age. I'll just go ahead and say most villains. My weakness would. Yes, I'll just say yeah. Yes, and my strength is... Let's see, if wood is my weakness, then my strength is fire. Because Godzilla breathes fire. Oh, no. They say he's got to go. Oh, Godzilla. Yeah. I have no pitch, sorry. Hey, he'd let his friends call him Woody. But otherwise, it was Wallace. Wallywood was just a marketing signature thing. Congrats on the signing. Will you ever visit Colorado? Well, just to be clear, I'm signing here because this is the area that I live and I was invited. So it's like, you know, if a store invited me and somehow could pay to let me travel, then of course. But I don't have the kind of money where I can just go like, you know, I haven't been down to Austin, Texas. I'll go do a signing there. Hey, I like Philadelphia. Time to fly out to Philadelphia. I just yeah. So it would basically be if a store, and what store would do that, but or a convention wanted to fly me out. Yeah, if they're gonna fly me out, I'll do it. I'll pick up Absolute Flash. I'll at least give it a try. I think that the Absolute universe has been strong enough that I'll try Absolute Flash, Absolute Martian Manhunter. I'll give at least the first issue a try. I don't want to add too many things to my pull list, but I feel like I should give it a try. Yeah. Maybe it's BS. Oh, this is the Jeff Lemire thing. I just can't speak to it. I didn't hear anything about something like that. We shall see. Appreciate the questions, though, folks. It's always fun to talk comics, and it's nice to like end on a positive note by talking about some really fun comics this week. Since some of the news that we had to get through was just a little more on the depressing side, not necessarily anger-inducing, but like definitely depressing. I didn't love that. Let's see. You never know. You might make a graphic novel that hits Pelkey or Telgemeier numbers. That would be something. Those folks can sell millions. Thanks for talking about the illustrator from Crying Freeman doing Spider-Man. Personal favorite illustrator. Oh, yeah. Ryoichi Ikegami, I definitely respect the hell out of his stuff. Have you read some of his other books? I think Heat and Sanctuary are both gorgeously illustrated. For a story, I think Sanctuary hits pretty hard. But he's still like working today on what is it like? It's something about money. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but he's still producing something. I agree. Martian Manhunter, Absolute Martian Manhunter looks utterly different than anything else I've read. So very interested. Very interested. Okay, noted. I only heard about it actually this past week, so I just hadn't heard of it ahead of time, but it sounds interesting. I like stuff that plays with time. I've got an idea or two for a book that plays with time, but more in a jokey way, but play off some of those tropes. Yeah. We'll see if I ever get the chance to like make my comics. It's tough because I have to work a day job, and to do that and make comic tropes, it just takes up almost all of my time, and it's really hard to justify like setting time aside to like, write for fun, creative writing. I like doing it. I like it a lot. It's really hard to justify. But I think that I'll get back to trying to like doodle out some of my ideas for like, comics on the show at the end in the next couple of weeks. Let's see. Scott Dunbeard just announced the new Wallywood Artist Edition will have 10 new stories. What do they mean by new, I wonder? Like, I thought everything he's done has at least been printed. Maybe it's never been reprinted before? That could be. Oh, I'm so glad you picked that up, Beowulf. Yeah, I think that Michael Avon Oeming had an incredible piece of work with William of Newbury. Potentially underrated. Really, really good. Oh, we had fun. Jim and I definitely had fun. I drove myself nuts. Like after, like I watched some of the video after Jamie had edited it to just make sure that it like made sense and everything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm talking too fast for myself. I'm stumbling over my words. I just need to learn how to slow down. And you know what I really need to do is I just need to trust Jim more, because Jim always has great points. He makes me laugh, and I just get like nervous, like I've got to fill air. So I just need to trust him more and slow down, and I think I'll be a better host. So it's taken me a while to get back to being used to doing a show with someone else is all. I think I can do a better job, and hopefully I each episode of Trash Movie Bonanza gets better. Also a big fan of Ryoichi Ikigami. I collect Sanctuary, Samurai Crusader, and Heat. Very, very cool. Very cool. Anyway, yeah, trying to decide exactly what I'm going to finish up for the next comic tropes. And I've got a bunch of artists that I really want to cover. But I feel like I haven't really done too many modern artists lately. I mean, you could argue Stuart Immonen, but I'm leaning towards maybe doing something like maybe it's time to take a look at Dan Mora before everybody does, That's one that I've got a thought on. And I had been doing a lot of work towards 2 episodes. Like I've got like a lot of the script written for East of West by Hickman and Dragata, as well as the history of Tijuana Bibles. But then I look at it and I go, I need to focus on doing like a string of episodes that are likely to be watched, because I have to get paid too. And then like what I can do is, it's not quite one for the whole world, one for me, because I never know what will hit, but I need to do at least a few here and there on like popular artists and like characters like Superman or Batman. If all I do are my favorite like indie books from the 80s, not everybody watches that, and I need to get paid. So I've thought about it, but Marvel is just so bad. I just don't think I'd have fun. Yeah, James Tynion, I definitely have some stuff to say about him, so that's not a bad idea. I've never done an episode on David Finch. No, something to think about. Draw Initial D. It's funny that you say that, just because I have this here. A friend of mine did a whatchamacallit, like a role-playing game set in like the 1980s. So I did an illustration for it, and I decided, since it was set in the 80s, to draw a 1986 Toyota Sprinter Trueno, just like the one in Initial D. Not that it's racing down mountaintops or anything. It's just in somebody's rearview mirror. But something that I wanted to do. Daniel Sempari would be fun to talk about. Yeah. Jamie can do some impressive stuff. I'm not against that idea at all. I don't have a video about John Paul Leon, but that's a great idea. You guys probably can't see, but like right up above the tip of my finger there, that's the artist edition for John Paul Leon's Winter Guard, I think it was called. Winter something. Big fan. Big fan. Old school tropes. That would be fun. That would be fun. Ooh, big fan of Al Williamson. That is not a bad idea at all. That's always a fun idea. Yeah, Chris Somney. Yep, Chris Somney's very impressive. But you know what? I feel like if I do that, I need to do Alex Toth first so that I can like refer more often to like what Toth does. Tony S. Daniel, potentially. He did a good fill-in issue with Scott Snyder on something like about a year and a half ago. I can't remember. Winterman. Yes, thank you, Winterman. Tony Moore. Sometimes, like, the trick with that is just I feel too close because I definitely consider him. Oh, EJ, I definitely want to do one about Go Nagai. I have read Devilman and Mazinger. I've seen a Cutie Honey show, but not the manga. But I think that Go Nagai is very influential. Very cool. You know, I was thinking the other day, what are like the last new characters that Marvel and DC have given us that have taken off that aren't derivative? Because Kamala Khan's great, but Ms. Marvel is technically a derivative of Carol Danvers, and I go, okay, Runaways, but that's like almost 20 years ago. What else did Marvel do? There's Mosaic. Mosaic was a character about 6 or 7 years ago. It's tricky. Greg Capullo, Kevin Nolan, James Herron, Jerome Pena, Sleepwalker, Jeff the Landshark. That's a good original character. I wonder if people would like that. I do like Kamala Khan. Have you covered the X-Men manga books? No. But they're mostly adaptations of the cartoon. Sentry's going back pretty far now, but yeah, I mean, that was 90s. I was trying to think of more recent than that, and I feel like Mosaic. Is there a completely original character by Marvel, not derivative, completely original, that had their own series even, not just sort of a backup character or supporting character? Is there a more recent superhero than Mosaic at Marvel? Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, again, derivative. Good. Just Luna Snow? Yeah, Luna Snow. When did she come out? She might be newer. Squirrel Girl goes back to the 90s. Squirrel Girl goes way back to the 90s. Now we're going back into the 80s and 90s too. So I'm trying to think if there's somebody more recent than Mosaic. I think that Mosaic is still newer than Luna Snow. Tell you what, I'm going to look it up real quick. Luna Snow. Oops. The first result I get is just Marvel Rivals. Okay, so Luna Snow was 2020. And when was Mosaic? Marvel. Just double checking here. 2016. So Luna Snow. Luna Snow is the most recent then, I bet. 2016. Thought it was newer, but yeah. Wait, Luna Snow came out in 2018 for a Marvel video game and 2019 for comics. Yeah, I seen it was early 2020, but maybe it was late 2019. Alpha from Amazing Spider-Man. No, that would be older. That would be so probably Reptile. I don't think so. Yeah, I bet Luna Snow is the most recent new superhero that has had. But wait a minute, has she had her own book? Yeah, she had her own book, right? Yeah. Anyway, just something to think about. Paul would not count. I'm talking about a superhero with their own book. But anyway, This was fun. Thanks, everybody. No, Quake is older than a bunch of those. Quake has been around for a while now. Did you read the comment I left yesterday? I don't know what you're talking about. No, I don't see every comment. I'm sorry. I don't know where to look for everything. Oh, no, I haven't really talked too much about Emerald City Comic-Con. I thought the panel went really well. It was the end of the day. It was something like 6:30 to 7:45. So, usually most people have left the convention center by then. It was in a medium-sized room, but it was pretty much full. Really good. Yeah, it was talking about horror. I thought that we had good discussion going. People stayed. It was really, really nice. So thanks for asking. Yeah. Let's see. And then I got a bunch of comics given to me by amazing people, and I need to take a look at that. But anyway, I need to get to work on the next comic, Tropes, and yes, Future Fight. I'll take a look at that. And I know about Arrow that you guys are talking about, the Chinese superhero. I don't know exactly when Arrow came out though. But anyway, no, because to be derivative specifically of Dazzler, she would have had to have been either called Dazzler or debut as Dazzler's sidekick or something. She's a similar idea, but she's not derivative of the character specifically. All right, everybody. I had a good time talking. Thanks for the questions. Getting back to work on comic tropes. I will see you next week when hopefully we have just happier news and really cool comics to come out. I'm looking forward to some of the ones that are coming out. One that I'm looking forward to is Out of Alcatraz by Christopher Cantwell and Tyler Crook. That looks really good this week. Oh, and I think new issue in English of Berserk tomorrow. Studio Gaga. Yeah, that'll be good. Thanks, everybody. Keep reading comics. Double salute. Take care.